All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Papillion La Vista Community Schools Board of Education meeting for January 10th, 2022. We'll move right into Section 1, our call to order. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. Moving on to item B under Section 1, call to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Fisher? Yes. Ms. Witt?
Here.
Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Dr. Foya?
Present.
All present?
Thank you very much. As we conclude Section 1, call to order, again, a notice to those in attendance and those watching via YouTube. The open meetings law is posted at the entrance to our boardroom. All right, that concludes Section 1, call to order. Moving on to Section 2, communications. This evening, we'll start with item A, our student council report with our folks from Papillion La Vista South. Welcome this evening.
Welcome, ladies.
Good evening, board. My name is Evie Del Campo, and I'm the president of the Papillion La Vista South Student Council.
I'm Hallie Settles, and I am the vice president. And tonight we will be starting with athletics. We will be starting with our girls basketball. The girls basketball has been working hard and competing with everyone around the metro area. The team currently has a record of 3-7, and the Lady Titans competed against Bell East in the first round of the metro tournament. Unfortunately, they lost, but it was a really hard-fought game, and we're really proud of them. The team completed the Metro tournament with a win against Elkhorn South. To boys basketball, the boys basketball team has been competing hard with a record of 6-4. During winter break, the team competed in the Metro tournament. Sadly, after a hard-fought game, they lost to Omaha Central by only 1 point. They came back after the holidays to pull out a Titan win against Millard West. The boys and girls will travel to Millard North this week to face the Mustangs, and we wish everyone good luck.
Our combined swim and dive team has had a successful season so far with a record of 2-2 and many individual achievements by the swimmers and divers. Numerous swimmers and divers have been taking home some hardware after the past few meets, along with many athletes pacing in top 12 finishers and breaking some school records. The team competed at the Millard South Invite this past weekend, and the girls placed second overall and the boys placed third overall. The team will travel to Elkhorn on Tuesday to compete, and they will keep representing PLCS proudly. Our unified basketball team has been putting in quite a bit of work. Our unified athletes and volunteers really enjoy what they do, and they have a lot of passion for athletics. The team has been practicing before winter break, and they played their first game at the end of November. And after a friendly competition with the Monarchs, our Titan Unified athletes took home a Titan win.
Dance team, the Papio South Sapphires attended their first competition of the year at UNO. The ladies have been putting on some amazing halftime shows during basketball games. We are so appreciative of their energy and talent that they bring during the halftime games. And our Sapphires became regional champs this past weekend. They placed second in the jazz category and first in the pom category. The dance team will compete at nationals in February. Great work to our Sapphires.
We'll now move on to our fine arts department. Our play production students put on a cold cabaret before the students went on winter break. The cabaret consisted of a series of monologues and musical theater performances in effort to raise money for the new lighting system. Our drama department has also started putting on their next musical. After a successful production of Mamma Mia, the PLS drama department is holding auditions for another musical, and they will put on the production of Footloose in April, and everyone is super excited to see.
Our award-winning show choirs and show band returned to the stage last Thursday evening to debut 3 spectacular shows. The show choir and band students have been practicing very hard to showcase the talent at Papio South. The PLS vocal department also hosted their annual competition, the South Titan Classic. PLS wants to give a huge thank you to all of our amazing students and parent volunteers. They also want to extend a thank you to all of our local businesses that supported the event. They could not have done it without you. The PLS Show Choir Department hits the road this weekend to attend the Greta Primetime Invitational, and then we wish everyone the best of luck.
Some students from our school DECA chapter, Presley Michaels and Rachel Boslow, organized a male pageant in efforts to raise money for Project Pink, an organization that supports breast cancer survivors. 7 male seniors showcased their talents, answered interview questions, and showed off their best pink attire. The event was not only fun to watch, but also very successful. The team raised $3,050 to contribute to Project Pink, and they want to thank all the student and staff volunteers for helping make their event a success.
Global Support Club. Before departing for winter break, our Global Support Club held a drive to donate goods to Afghan refugees living in Nebraska. The club collected items such as crayons, coloring books, and other school supplies. Global Support Club collected many donations and gave the supplies to an education drive for the Afghan refugees.
Next Friday, January 21st, the Monarchs and Titans basketball teams will be facing off in their annual Color of Hope games. We encourage all of you to attend in hopes of raising money for Nebraska All-State Student Council's state fundraiser, Make-A-Wish. So all of the student councils in Nebraska will fundraise for this specific charity. If you feel so inclined, please consider purchasing a Swishes for Wishes shirt. The link can be found on Twitter at Papio South Stuco, and all proceeds will be donated to Make-A-Wish. There will also be raffle baskets, and hopefully we can get a big crowd out to help support, these athletes, and two, all these cancer patients and survivors, and hopefully make some wishes come true. The girls will play at 5 p.m. and the boys will play at 7 p.m. at Papio South, and we hope to see you all there.
We want to thank you guys again for your nonstop hard work. We really do appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you for having us out tonight.
Very in-depth. Thank you. Thank you so much. As always, you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of tonight's agenda, but though we've only been in the second semester for just a few days, I can imagine you're already racking up some good hours of homework. So again, don't feel you can't just sneak out while we continue on. So again, thank you so much for your report. All right, moving on to item B this evening under Section 2 Communications. Tonight's public comment for items not on the remainder of the agenda. Again, this section is limited to 30 minutes of total time with 3 minutes per individual speaker unless a majority of the board votes to extend the allocated time. Again, those who may be new to the process, again, when I call you up to the table here with the microphone, again, I just ask for your name and address for the record, please. All right, tonight, first up for public comment this evening. And again, I should remind everybody, Ms. Branco has a timer. The first beeps come on about 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So again, that's just kind of giving you a hint that there's about 45 seconds left in your time. I will also monitor time and try to give you a wave if you're approaching that 3-minute time limit. So again, moving to our first speaker, Ms. Lowan Eby.
Okay, hello, my name is Lowan Eby, and I reside at 1401 Edgewater Circle in Papillion. So I have two handouts, actually. So I'm going to talk about two topics. I'm going to talk about the legal fees and then the subcommittees. So the first topic, I have attached the district legal fee disbursements for 2012 to 2021 and January 22nd, or January 2022. On January 1st of 2014, Valerie Potter brought a claim of injury while sledding on school property. On November 28th, 2016, a settlement was reached for $500,000. On May 6, 2016, a complaint was filed by Edward Hamilton alleging violations of the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Act violations, discrimination, denied comparable opportunity, and other allegations. On January 8th, 2018, the lawsuit was settled on mutually agreeable terms, which shall remain confidential. From the PLCS board meeting of December 13th, 2021 at 33:15, Dr. Rickley stated the following: I would also like to take the opportunity to highlight a number of these complaints that have been lodged against the district within the last 2 months alone. We've had complaints lodged with the Attorney General twice. We've had complaints lodged with the state auditor, with the Nebraska Department of Education, the Nebraska Professional Practice Commission, and lastly, DHHS. At 3336, 7 complaints filed by the district taxpayers that have chewed up an enormous amount of time, money, and resources on the taxpayer dime. On the taxpayer dime, emphasis added. All 7 of these complaints have been found without merit, have summarily been dismissed, and said the district did what we were supposed to do. That is something that our taxpayers need to know. Dr. Rickley, are you suggesting district taxpayers not file complaints to save money? The second part of my comments is regarding the subcommittees. So I have attached a report from 2012 to 2021 in which the payroll has increased north of $15 million. With humility, I request that the board consider hosting a school advisory committee to research why the payroll has increased by that amount. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up this evening for public comment, Ms. Brittany Holtmeyer.
Hi, Brittany Holtmeyer, 2007 Ridgewood Drive. First off, I'm very saddened we don't get to see your smiles tonight as we did watching online the Board of Education retreat. Last meeting, for the gentleman saying thank you for the board for being here on your own free will and not being paid to be here. Just to remind him, they chose this. They chose to run to be on the ballot, and they chose to become an elected official knowing they will not get paid. Mr. Rickley, you had stated last meeting that your 600 people had come to your school and not to Target, CVS, etc., because they feel safe. What about the other students and staff in your medical building? Do they feel safe going to eat lunch at a table where their peers were injected? So circling back to that, Mr. Rickley, where's the accountability at? Where's the accountability knowing that Annette Iman falsified a document? The building use contract in which we asked for was dated on November 16th, 2021, and was also signed, and the document was actually made on November 23rd. To me, a contract must have both parties' signatures, and it had hers signed as the building supervisor. No, we do not come to these meetings to complain and just to ask for resignations. If you don't know me, I'm a believer in Jesus and I'm a believer in people. But when one has a job to do and they're not abiding by the rules and policies that they put into place, when the district can sit back and let teacher-student relationships be swept under the rug and the use of paraphernalia, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say something. The problem is when the board voted to give Dr. Rickley general authority resolution for COVID-19, the board gave up the policy making authority to Dr. Rickley. From the August 16, 2021 board retreat minutes, on page 2, it states the following: general authority resolution be drawn up and put on August 23rd. Board meeting showing that Dr. Rickley has authority to make decisions without the board's votes. Governor Ricketts ended the coronavirus emergency on June 28, 2021. The state of Nebraska is not under a COVID-19 emergency. There was no justification for the board to give Dr. Rickley such an authority. And just a reminder to the board that we voted for you guys on our ballot, so once again, you work for us and you need to hold Dr. Rickley accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up this evening, for items not on tonight's agenda, Ms. Laureen, I screw this up every week, sorry. Renate, right? Renate? Renate. My apologies.
No, no worries.
No.
Okay, you can call me anything you want, just don't call me late for dinner. Okay.
Welcome.
Laureen Renate, 1108 Park Drive, Papillion. On January 22nd, 2020, I made a public records request for salary and benefit information for all personnel at PLCS. Annette Iman communicated to me that a special query was going to be written by the IT department and it should take about 2 weeks' time. I did receive that request, and then I made that same request on September 10 of 2021. I also did request money from the COVID Relief Acts and any money received from big tech companies. A letter dated September 17, 2021 from Karen Hawes at KSB Law was sent to me indicating that in order to receive the information, it would cost me $4,500. I went to the NDE website and found the COVID money information and would make a separate request for big tech money at a later date. On September 30, 2021, I received an email from Annette Iman along with a new invoice for $300 to obtain that information regarding salary and benefit information. I then submitted a complaint letter to the Nebraska State Attorney General. The books to PLCS should always be open to the public for fiscal information. A letter dated December 17, 2021 was mailed from the Attorney General to me stating that PLCS was in complete compliance and that $300 was a reasonable amount to charge because the school estimated it would take longer than the free 4 hours per the Nebraska statute. I will be filing an appeal. The defense that was given to me by the office was since the Omaha World Herald link was taken down, PLCS would need to rebuild this query. I don't believe it because since my first request in 2020, I was told the same thing. A special query was going to be built and would take time, but I could obtain the same information from that link. But the query would have to have been there in 2020 and at the same time need to be built. Now, the link is not there and still this special query needs to be built. I doubt the IT department would have discarded that query, so which is it? It is a complete insult to think that a taxpayer-funded entity should ask money from a taxpayer to obtain public information. I was a Series 7 and 63 registered rep, so I do have a little bit of knowledge about how finance works. The citizens of Papillion and La Vista are the oversight community, and it is so easy to spend other people's money. We had a golden opportunity here the citizens pay 55 cents of every dollar to the school and the rest to the city and the county. So there was a golden opportunity here with all that revealed issues with schools since the beginning of the pandemic to reach out to the community and work with us. But sadly, now we are angry. The school belongs to the community, not to the BOE and not to the administration. The BOE was elected to make sure that policy was adhered to and not selectively followed. The administration is to handle the day-to-day functions and be good stewards of our tax dollars. The teachers are here to teach, period. It's a mutual contract with the city, school, and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up for public comment this evening for items not on tonight's agenda, Ms. Dorothy Reyes. Welcome.
Good evening, Ms. Dorothy Reyes, 1019 Conestoga Road, Papillion, Nebraska. Ms. Siri, I am still waiting for your email in response to the ESSER funding for the implementation of contact tracing cameras, as I have requested numerous times. I have declined your offer to a phone conversation to discuss it. I would appreciate a response in email, as I, again, have requested numerous times. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes item B under Section 2 Communications. Moving on to item C, I will turn it over to Dr. Rickley for this evening's Superintendent's Report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lotus and members of the board, and happy 2022 to all of our community members who are here this evening, to our Board of Education, to our staff, our taxpayers that may be watching at home. Hopefully everybody had a lovely Christmas and enjoyed the winter break. It was a little bit longer than usual, which, given the difficult times we find ourselves in, probably was the right thing at the right time. Speaking of, just so our community that's here as well as watching on YouTube, Ms. Fisher is, you'll notice, signaling her intentions because she's having some vocal cord difficulties, and we don't want to cause any permanent damage there. Dr. Settles, you'll notice, the head of our HR, is also home ill, so lots of sickness going on around the district. With second semester comes a variety of new opportunities for us as a school district and as a community. Chief among them is the legislative session, which started on January 5th. That's always of particular interest to the school districts, since in a short session, and this is a short session, it's a 60-day session, which means it'll be completed sometime on or about in April. Typically, there's between 500 and 600 bills that are introduced in a short legislative session. Not all of those pertain to public schools, of course, but a variety of them deal with transportation requirements, state aid requirements, curriculum requirements. So we'll be watching those very carefully, and Mr. Richards and Tim Gay will be providing periodic updates. January 20th is particularly important, since that represents the end of bill introduction. As this board is well aware, the first 10 days of this session are when all bills must be introduced, with a few exceptions. So once we get through that bill introduction period, we'll have Mr. Gay come in and tell us those bills that we ought to be paying particular attention to. Along with the legislative session, we've also made some incredible progress with a number of bond projects and facility projects, and I wanted to single out Mr. Richards and his team in particular. The Monarch project, the expansion and renovation, hasn't gone exactly to plan in terms of meeting the deadlines, and we're well aware of that, but the work, the quality of work that's been done is simply spectacular. There's significant renovations at the north end of the building, which are largely complete, which include the administrative wing, the 9th grade addition, STEM classrooms, expansion of the cafeteria, and then further renovations on the southern end of the building will commence here shortly. But for those of you that have visited Monarch, since the northern end has been renovated, it has significant wow factor. In fact, I believe one of our board members suggested perhaps we do a board meeting at both the renovated Titan and renovated Monarch space. So we'll look at doing that. Thank you for the suggestion, Mr. Madler. Also wanted to remind the board and community that the vaccination clinics are continuing on. In fact, we have another major vaccination clinic planned for this Saturday, which is June 15th. We are looking at 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The main focus will be on students, but there may be a handful of adults and staff that will have the opportunity as well. It will be a Pfizer-only clinic. It will be first dose, second dose booster, and the goal is to have about 1,200 shots by the time the day is up. So it'll be a major effort. Special props to Ms. Iman and her team for coordinating, and obviously Sarpy-Cass County Health Department, who co-sponsors these vaccination clinics. A couple of congratulations as well that I wanted to offer before I conclude my remarks. Dr. Melanie Mueller, the board will take action at some point on her resignation, our Director of Assessment and Evaluation. Dr. Mueller has been a longtime district employee, and she'll be retiring at the end of the current school year. Also wanted to recognize Carrie Horton. One of the things that we do as a school district is recognize our teachers on a monthly basis with the Superintendent's Gratitude Award. Ms. Horton is a kindergarten teacher at Trumbull Park, and we were able to give her that award. It's always a surprise Friday morning, so that was kind of fun. And lastly, I would like to congratulate Ms. Fisher. Much has been said and written about the recall effort which failed. Those votes were due on December 20th, and as we well know, the group fell way short of that benchmark of over 7,000 votes needed, signatures needed to trigger the recall. That is good news for this community. That is good news for this board. Ms. Fisher is an outstanding board member. She is an outstanding community member. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better board member in the state of Nebraska. In fact, has been so recognized with the ANMAC Tier Award as recently as a couple of years ago, voted upon by her peers as the best board member in the state. I would like to recognize Ms. Fisher and thank her for her continued service on the board. And with that, I would conclude my remarks, Mr. Lotus.
Thank you, Dr. Rickley. Moving on to item D under Section 2 Communications. I would open it up this evening for board comments. Always tough after a good 2.5 week break, and I mean, I know Ms. Fisher is dying to say numerous things tonight, but obviously she is without voice. Again, just wanted to welcome everybody back into second semester. We know that after a long break, it takes a few days. I think it was a good decision within the calendar to allow that one additional day for everybody to have a little bit of a break, and then the Tuesday last week for teachers and staff to report back to their buildings, have a chance to breathe, get organized, and get ready for students on full day Wednesday. So again, welcome back to all of our staff and students ready to persevere through second semester. Seeing no further board comments, we will move on to item E, committee reports. Building, Grounds, and Finance.
We did meet, and the items that we spend most of our time will be discussed later on, the scoreboard and improvements to the baseball fields.
Thank you, Dr. Tafoya. Human Resources and Student Services.
We did not have a meeting this session.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. And Curriculum and Americanism. Ms. Witt, I don't.
We didn't meet either.
Okay. Thank you both. All right, for those in attendance, that concludes, and those watching, that concludes Section 2 Communications. As we move into Section 3 action items, being the first board meeting of the new calendar year, this is always a unique meeting as we as a board have to take care of our annual business. As current presiding president, my current term as president for fiscal year 2021 now concludes. As we move on to item A under annual business, I will turn over the election of officers over to Dr. Rickley until a new president is named. And once that decision has been made, that president then will continue to preside over the rest of the agenda for this evening. With that being said, I will turn it over to Dr. Rickley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lotus, members of the board. And just because we only do this once a year, I do want to kind of explain the business rules and how this works. It is a little bit unique in that I am not a voting member of the board, but while we are momentarily without a president, I take over until the president is elected, as Mr. Lotus indicated, and we proceed with the meeting. As the community may or may not be aware, there are currently 4 officer positions on this board of 6. The 2 remaining people serve as directors. The 4 officer positions are president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. I will oversee the process only during these next few moments, upon which time the new president, when she or he is seated, will take over. Once the president is elected, I will return to simply being the superintendent. There's 2 different ways that this process can unfold. We can either individually nominate and vote on the officer positions one at a time for each of the four, or the board has in the past chosen to do a full slate of officers. Either is permissible under our policy. Once individual names or a slate of names has been rendered, they do not require a second. Typically, when boards of education take action on something, it requires a second discussion and then the vote is taken. It doesn't work that way when we submit names. When names are submitted, they do not require a second. When we have determined that there are no more names for either the individual officer positions or the slate of officers, we will close nominations. A motion may be made, but it is not required. If a motion is made, however, a second is required. And then we will do a voice call from Ms. Barranco to determine who the winner is, either of the individual officer position or the slate of officer positions. Questions from the board on how the process will unfold? Mr. Lotus, did I leave anything out? Okay, with the directions being out there, the floor is open for nominations for either the president of the board or a slate of officers.
I would like to put a motion on the floor to nominate Brian Lotus as president, vice president as Skip Bailey, secretary Valerie Fisher, and treasurer Marcus Madler.
I will second that nomination. Slate?
We have a motion that didn't require a second, but I think that's a really strong show of support from a fellow board member. So the motion, the name that was nominated was President Brian Lotus, Vice President Skip Bailey, Secretary Val Fisher, Treasurer Marcus Madler. I will accept other nominations either for an individual or for a slate. Seeing no other nominations for individuals or for a different slate, with the board's permission, I will close nominations. Seeing no objections, we have a slate of officers proposed. We will do a voice vote momentarily, but again, just as a reminder, President Brian Lotus, Vice President Skip Bailey, Secretary Val Fisher, Treasurer Marcus Madler. Ms. Barranco, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 On behalf of the community and our members who are with us this evening, could we have a round of applause to introduce our new board members and new officers, please? Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ickley, for presiding over our annual election of officers. Again, congratulations to those selected for officers. As a reminder to the board and to the general public, again, officers have required responsibilities to direct operations of the board in terms of contracts and bank responsibilities and other things. Again, each individual of this board is still only one vote. When it comes to action items, it's just additional duties as required by those individual positions. I would like to thank the members of the board for entrusting me again as president for another year. I hope to continue to lead you all with professionalism and respect, and continue to keep our meetings organized and well structured to move along and conduct the business necessary for this district. Again, thank you. I'm very humbled and appreciative of all that you have done this last year and what I expect you as board members to help again achieve our goals in 2022. Moving on then, under annual business, under action by consent, I will entertain a motion to authorize our 2022 annual business.
I'll make a motion to approve the above noted items relative to our 2022 annual business.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Madler. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you all. Moving on to item C. This item is strictly informational purposes only. Again, as we do each year, we, as a board, have 3 current subcommittees. As you heard earlier, our Buildings, Grounds, and Finance, Human Resources and Student Services, and Curriculum and Americanism. Again, there are many other organizations that this board is required to have representation on. A few of those include, again, the Nebraska Association of School Boards legislation representation, our metro area school board representation, our MABE organization, the GNSA, the Greater Nebraska Schools Association legislative representative. Again, we have 3 required board members for our Papillion La Vista Schools Foundation for their bylaws, as well as representation on the Teammates Board, and then a district student wellness representative. Again, this is just a reminder for all of you as current board president. Please reach out if you have interest in changing subcommittees and or wanting to be a representative on those other organizations. If you could please have those to me here within the next couple of weeks. We do have some requirements to pass along those representatives' information in order to update their contact information and start meetings are getting scheduled very quickly for a lot of those organizations. All right, moving on to item D under Section 3 action items, annual business, our 2022 board meeting dates.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 board meeting dates as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Madler and a second by Dr. Tafoya. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you all. And just a reminder again to the board and to the public in attendance or those watching on YouTube, again, that we have some dates in parentheses. Those are the fifth Monday of each month. Those are in parentheses as they are just potential meetings. Should there be matters arise that dictate we don't need to wait so far in between the second meeting of a month where there is a fifth Monday, there is a potential that we as a board can call a meeting on that fifth Monday if considered necessary. All right, and with that, board, that concludes our annual business for tonight's meeting and for this year. We will now move on to our normal monthly business under Section 3 action items. Item A is our action by consent.
Motion to approve the action by consent agenda?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Witt and a second by Mr. Bailey. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you. And moving on to our final item under Section 3 action items, our board meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021.
I'll make the motion to approve the board meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021.
Have a motion by Mr. Madler and a second by Dr. Tafoya. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you all. That concludes Section 3 action items. Before we move on to our Section 4 discussion and information items for this evening, as we want to just continue on with the agenda this evening, keep things moving. Typically after our annual business is concluded and we have an election of officer seats, we typically will maybe do some shuffling of seats and everything else with the board's approval. My recommendation is we obviously would just wait till our next meeting to do that shuffling so we can just continue on with our business. Is that agreeable? All right. Thank you all. All right. Section 4, discussion and information items. Item A is our district COVID update. I will invite Ms. Eyman up to present our current data.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Eyman.
It's been an interesting day with COVID management and numbers in our district. I want to start just with the typical thing, just the reminder that our focus continues to be on keeping our students healthy and safe in all aspects, and our staff healthy and safe in all aspects, and in-person learning continues to be our focus. So the numbers are certainly not going the direction that we would hope that they would go. This is the youth data for just Sarpy and Cass County. That break is because this is a report that the health department calculates and sends to us, and over the winter break we didn't have numbers submitted to us, but this is what the numbers have done since they've been submitting them to us. You can see that they were at 39 there towards the end. The yellow line is the 13 to 18-year-olds, and the white line is the 13 to 18-year-olds, and the yellow line is the 5 to 12-year-olds. And you can see, unfortunately, that number is going straight up for our youth. And this is just our youth numbers of positive cases in the district, or in Sarpy, all of Sarpy and Cass County. Then if we look at what's happening with all numbers, all ages, just any positive case throughout Sarpy and Cass County, you can see that line is equally reflective of what we're seeing with our youth, and it continues to go straight up. So these are the county data. As I've said numerous times, generally what's happening in the county is also reflected in our school district numbers, and you're going to see that that is indeed the case. These are our staff numbers. Our staff numbers continue to hold pretty steady. Again, the break was over winter break when we didn't have staff in the buildings and we didn't have cases reported. So we were at 13 cases the week before break and at 10 cases that first week back. I just want to remind that first week back was 3 days. It was not a full week. It was only 3 days. I will tell you today, just today, we had an additional 10 staff cases. So what we are really seeing this week today is a direct reflection of what we're seeing in those county numbers as well. Again, we look at that data broken down by level, elementary, middle school, and high school, not drastic differences. This would be that first 10 case. As I looked at the numbers just for today, it's very reflective. It's very similar to this. We probably have a few more high school cases where last week we had a few more elementary cases. Our student numbers, as you can see what's happened with our student numbers, again, that 37 was our first week back, which was a short week, so it was 3 days. Again, I just remind you that these numbers reflect students being in school at a time that they're positive and exposing other students in our schools to the numbers. So we had a lot of students that were testing positive over the break. They are not reflected in these numbers. And I think other districts count their numbers differently. So I think if you look at other school districts, that's probably the difference between our 37 and another school districts whose numbers might be higher because they might have counted all those students that tested positive over break. We don't do that because we don't have a good mechanism to make sure that that data is valid. We know when we're in school if kids are in school or not, so we know that the data is valid. So that 37 was a count of those first 3 days back. Again, I would just say that the individual total for students just today, we had 79 students test positive. So our numbers are very reflective of what we're seeing with those county numbers, almost a straight line up. And that's just a 1 day count is the 79. So today we had 79 students. Those numbers, also I would say we were starting to see a flip here. I'll go to the next slide. You can see last week we started for the first time to see that flip in an increase in our older students instead of our younger students. That orange line crossed the yellow line for the first time this school year. Today that would be opposite. Today our elementary cases were up higher than our secondary cases. So certainly is something that we absolutely are monitoring very closely with a 1 day total of positives of 79 students. The other thing that we continue to monitor is the absence rate, overall absence rate. The 348 would have been the week prior to winter break. So it would have been during finals week. I think during finals week you have a lot of kids that come, they make a huge effort to be there to take their finals, particularly at the secondary level. That number was pretty low at 348. Last week, that number was 615. Again, we look at, because this is the number that drives that 7%, so we look at this number very closely. At 615, we were still good with that 7%. Today, when we ran this report, there were 950 students out sick, which is higher. When we were in the heat of COVID and the heat of quarantining, we went over 1,000 a couple times. There were a few weeks there in November that we were over 1,000, but 915 is pretty high. I want to share super quick just the new CDC guidelines. They did change all of that last week, so as a school district, we'll be following the new CDC guidelines. For positive cases, it's now isolating for 10 days or for 5 days, and as long as your symptoms are improving or gone, you can come back into circulation on day 6, but you have to wear a mask from day 6 to day 10, and we will be following those guidelines as a school district with our positive and how we handle those. With the exposed, the new CDC guidelines, again, they've changed that. It used to be 14 days. If you had exposure, they dropped that down to 10 days. If you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to isolate at home. You can remain it, but you do need to mask and monitor for symptoms. If you're not...
Audience, please. Excuse me. This is her presentation, not your floor. We have public comment coming up, please.
If you're not fully vaccinated, then the guidelines from the CDC, again, these are their guidelines, not ours. If you're not fully vaccinated, then you're supposed to monitor at home for 5 days. They would recommend that you test after day 5, return on day 6, but continue to wear that mask from day 6 to day 10. So our response plan, I just want to go through this one last time. Middle school and high school, it's that 7%. So it's a 3-day average of 7%. We are looking at this very closely. We have over half of our schools that are at that 7%. So we'll monitor that for 3 days to see what happens. But at the end of those 3-day average, if we have that 7%, then we'll go back to the mask. And I think one of the things that's really important, as we have a lot of people that are concerned that, taking the masks off as there's a new surge of cases, is that we have those protocols built in to make sure that we are putting precautions in place to get the mask back on if we need to. And at the middle school and high school, that protocol is the 7%. At the elementary, what we are doing is we are masking after 2 cases. I will tell you, we have 8 classrooms as of the end of the day today that we have put masks on because we have 2 or more cases in those. So 8 elementary classrooms that we have required masks. Those masks then, based on those new CDC guidelines, those masks at the elementary go back on for 10 days from their last exposure. So whatever day it was that they were exposed to that positive case, it's 10 days that they'll mask. The other piece of precautionary measure that we have in place at the elementary that we've added is the 7%. So if the total school attendance absence rate for illness at the elementary level is 7% or higher, then we'll mask the entire school for the 10 days. And again, that will be the 3-day rolling average, just like it is for the middle school and high school. Currently, we have about half of our elementary schools that we're monitoring for that 7% that they're closed. And with 915 students out absent, that's not surprising that we're hitting that 7%. Also, the other precautionary measure that we have in place to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to keep things under control in our schools is if there's multiple cases, the health department has defined multiple cases or an outbreak as 3 or more. If there's 3 or more cases in a classroom or a group of students, then we work with the health department to determine what other non-pharmaceutical interventions need to be put in place. For example, we've got a couple elementary schools that are in this case right now. For example, they don't go to the lunchroom to eat. They continue to eat. They do their lunch in their classroom. And they make sure that they're spread 6 feet apart. So we're just taking those extra precautions. So when they do, because if there's 3 or more, we know they're masked. So if they do have to take their masks off, like at lunchtime, they're spread out at 6 feet or more and they're not exposing other individuals. And then there's additional hand cleaning and cleaning mechanisms that are put in place to make sure that we're doing everything we can from the health department recommendations as far as the MPIs to take every step we can to make sure that we're keeping our students safe. The communication around the COVID protocols, we did plan on changing our middle school and high school communication, but with this increase in numbers that we're seeing, we decided we would wait until February 1. So right now at the middle school and high school, we're continuing to communicate at the end of each day and let families know that on today, so today they got a letter that said how many students at what grade level tested positive at their child's school. At the elementary level, we're continuing to communicate each positive case that happens to the classroom of the families that are impacted by that positive case. Occasionally, like today, we had a couple cases where we had 2 cases, so we communicated 2 cases and the mandatory masks along with that all at one time. Probably really good timing for those families that would want to take advantage of this opportunity, but we are doing another vaccination clinic. It's a vaccination clinic that's hosted at Papillion La Vista South, but it's for all of Sarpy and Cass County schools. So it's all the school districts partnering with the health department to bring that vaccination clinic. The focus on that clinic is for students. Last week, I think actually last Friday was the first official day that students 12 and up could get the booster shot. So that booster shot will be available for those students that are 12 and up that want it. They'll also have first and second vaccination shots. If we get closer to the deadline to the next Saturday, this coming Saturday, and all the spots are not filled, we will open that up to families of our students. But right now we're focusing just on students in all of Sarpy and Cass County. So each school district is communicating that out. Questions?
Open up for board comments or questions. Sorry, Mr. Mather.
Thanks for putting it together. Per usual, I know it takes a lot of time to do that, and all of the communication with the Suffolk County Health Department. I mean, I wish the numbers were going in a better direction, that's for sure. It is, but we put those procedures in place back in, what we voted on in October, I think, to put that plan out there. And, you know, if half the schools are at the 7%, then yeah, I think we gotta stick with them and see them through, even if it is just this shortly after putting the mask back on kids. I mean, we put them in place for a reason, so I don't see there's any reason of dropping those requirements now. For the vaccination clinic, you said for students and then potentially for families after that. Teachers at all included in that?
Yes. In fact, that'll probably be the next big push, particularly with the boosters. A lot of our staff are vaccinated, but those that aren't would have the opportunity. So yes, that will probably be the first big push we do if those spots are not filled by students. The health department felt really strongly from what they were seeing because they were doing separate clinics in multiple school districts. They felt really strongly that we needed a big push for just our youth. So that's why we started with that. But again, if those don't get filled, we'll push it absolutely to teachers, all staff in all the schools in Sarpy and Cass County, and then as well as the families. Absolutely. And I do agree with what you're saying. I think we put those protocols in place. It's not what we expected to have happen, 4 days back after kids come back, but it's a reflection of what we're seeing in the entire county. It's not something that we're seeing just in the Papillion La Vista schools. And I think having those systems in place where we put the mask back on when we get to a certain level, and then there's a time limit of when they come off, is going to be a protocol that we'll continue to monitor. If we find that those protocols aren't working, or we're not putting them on fast enough, or we're not taking them off fast enough, then we can always adjust them. But we do have those guidelines in place, and I think letting those protocols, those new guidelines that we have in place, work is a really good step.
Any other board comments or questions for Ms. Simon regarding the COVID data?
I, too, would like to thank you for the updates, and I've been watching the numbers also nationally as well as locally, and we're right on trend with the rest of the country as far as the Omicron and the transmissibility of that new variant. The good news is that, according to the researchers, they're saying that this, once it passes us, we should also be then in a glide path that we can just live with the virus the way it is and make those decisions as we go. And I want to thank the superintendent and his staff for monitoring it as well as you do, and making sure that we put protocols in place that can help. I was the one who voted no that we do that protocol because I felt like we still needed to have masks on. I still do. That's a decision that a parent can make now, as it's recommended by not only this district but the CDC and the Sarpy County Health Department. And I want to acknowledge that the superintendent has the right, as the operational director of this district, that if he sees fit that we require masks again for a time, that you have the authority to do so. So thank you for that.
No, along with all of the board members, I know, I monitor the data on multiple times a day, waiting for the Sarpy, Cass County, as well as Douglas County to refresh data. I was not surprised, but also a little shocked when we saw active cases in the county, the two-county area jump over 4,000 today. That is an all-time high for our active cases in any given day, as well as I think we set a record last week for number of collected positive cases with over, I think, 2,600. So not the direction any of us want to see. But again, as Ms. Simon stated at the beginning, our ultimate goal as a district is to continue to have in-person learning, as we've seen from remote learning, as well as what we're seeing from the research and data coming out of the rest of the country. Remote learning just does not work, and it is very detrimental to our students as well as our staff. And so, again, we're hopeful the current protocols work in order to keep the vast majority of our students and staff in person, progressing with their educational development. And as was noted earlier, if we need to make modifications and or if in between board meetings things really skyrocket, Ms. Witt noted that we did give Dr. Rickley that authority. Again, as a board, if we feel that that authority has not been utilized and we feel that we would like to take action, we, again, still have the authority to make changes to our current protocols or policy as deemed necessary. The reason those emergency authorization was granted is we don't meet every week. And by the time data changes on a daily basis, we may not have time to put 2-3 day notice out to the public in order to hold a public emergency meeting to make fast changes. So that's what they were put in place for. But again, as a reminder to the board, we can and will, if needed, put in the proper protocols to, again, maintain that in-person learning. With that, any additional board comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment regarding our COVID update. Thank you, Ms. Hyman. Again, public comment for items on tonight's agenda. Total time is limited to 30 minutes, with individuals not exceeding 3 minutes of total time. I'll call up each individual again to the desk with the microphone. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Again, as a reminder, Ms. Baranko has the timer. 2 minutes and 15 seconds will be your first notification, and then the next bell ringing will be at 3 minutes. I will monitor as well, just in case we have a malfunction with our kind of official timer. All right, first up this evening regarding our COVID update is Ms. Sarah Laura Tooney.
Sarah Laura Tooney, 8816 Granville Parkway, La Vista. I don't usually write out a statement, but it's too important at this point to just kind of wing it like I usually try to do. I'm here to respectfully ask, please, of the board, please put a mask mandate back in our schools for our kids, at least for 2 weeks, if not through spring break, if not through the end of the semester. My daughter is 2. She goes to a local daycare, and today we received our 5th positive COVID test email from her daycare. There have been at least 8 articles in the World Herald, WOWT Channel 6, and various other local and national media news sites about the increase in COVID cases since the Christmas holiday in the last 2 weeks. There was an expose on the Sunday Today program with Willie Geist about the differences between is it cold, is it flu, is it COVID, and the top 5 symptoms for each 3 of these things are the exact same thing. And the doctor that they interviewed stated outright, if you are not sure, assume that it's COVID until a test proves you otherwise, and wear a mask. Our under 12-year-olds aren't eligible to get boosted, and my son just turned 7. A mask is an additional layer of protection that I can give him, that you can give him, because there are other options, there are other layers of protection that he's not eligible for. And that in turn protects his sister. It protects other people that he comes into contact with in this group that don't have access to that. Being a member of a community is about being a group of people. It's not just about the loudest voices. And I hear a lot of loud voices over the last 2 years. I hear a lot of people quoting religion, and I'm not up here to argue religious beliefs with anybody, but my own personally belief, I have a hard time believing that Jesus or God would hear these I statements about my wants and my needs and how I come first in our communities and support those, because Jesus and God and being a Christian is about being a member of your community, not just the member of your community. I said it back in August, and I will say it again today. It costs me as an individual nothing to be kind and practice caring and empathy for my neighbors and other members of my community, and to teach those principles to my children, which is what we are trying to teach them. But it's really hard when other adults and other community members that he comes into contact with don't do the same. I don't know who I come into contact with on a daily basis that has somebody who is immunocompromised in their home or in their community that I can just be kind towards and help protect by putting a very simple article of cloth or paper or whatever mask you choose to wear over your face. I come from the nonprofit community of caring for marginalized, underserved individuals. I will email the board the rest of my statements. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next up this evening for public comment regarding our district COVID update, Ms. Lowan Eby.
Hello, my name is Lowan Eby, and I reside at 1401 Edgewater Circle, Papillion. I am the state leader of Make Americans Free Again, Nebraska. If anyone in the district or anyone listening has been denied a religious exemption or a medical exemption for face masks, please send an email to mafanebraska@gmail.com with your testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up this evening for public comment regarding our COVID update, Ms. Brittany Holtmeyer.
Hello, Brittany Holtmeyer, 2007 Ridgewood Drive. For one, you are not making your presentation sound very good when you are out here flaunting how many students and staff are vaccinated. Go back and take a look at your charts and see how much they have gone up once you have started your medical facility within your school. So, how was the holidays? You're having any parties, going to Target with your kids and no masks? Another COVID injection clinic. There is no end date in this. I am so curious as to what your kickback is with hosting these. Annette, can we please see a chart next meeting of all the kids and staff who are out of school and who were vaccinated? What is a case? What test are you using? Are all of these cases COVID? Are they Delta? Are they Omicron? Or are they the Flurona? Are the people included in your chart with that 7%, do they have digestive issues? Are they in there? Can we get some clarification, please? Your numbers are rising. Vaccine reaction is real. It does happen, and it does not have to happen immediately. But give it up for the 600 plus that receive them and will once again receive them on Saturday. Staff cases, that was high. Aren't they all vaccinated? Pretty much. I personally know a teacher who just received their booster, and what do you know? They're not in school. They are sicker than a dog right now. What do you do with the flu cases in 2018, 2019? Did you mask up? Did you send letters home to the parents? And discrimination, vax or not vaxxed? We are in the year 2022. I just want things to make sense. UNMC, a healthcare worker, now has to wear 2 masks while indoors because one isn't safe. If you are COVID positive, you can go to work within 5 days. That's the new quarantine time. But if you are not vaccinated and a healthy healthcare last year hero, you cannot come back to work till after your 10 days. My child also goes to a preschool here within the district. They have not worn masks. They have had no COVID cases, and they have not had a shutdown. I have not received a letter. And being a Christian, my Jesus touched lepers, and my Jesus told me not to live in fear.
Thank you. All right, next up this evening, Ms. Laureen Reine.
Laureen Reine, 1108 Park Drive, Papillion. If masks work, then why don't they work? This COVID thing is a virus. We, meaning all of us that have been protesting mask mandates and any other mandate for the past 2 years, know this. It wasn't then, and it is not now, a conspiracy theory. The government is just starting to admit that this is a virus. Masks don't work for a virus. A school is a business of education, math, hard sciences, American history, etc., not social issues or health issues. You are part of the problem. We have lost 2 generations of children. For all the grandstanding about how you are for children, they have both been a political and social pawn. Keep in mind these frightened and intimidated children will one day be making the rules and be running things. Rules probably you won't want to follow. Stop teaching children what to think and teach them how to think. Keep medical services and practices out of the schools. For all you parents out there that are scared to death, your child might get sick. They do get sick. But don't complain to the school about your phobias. That's between you and your doctor. If you are so afraid, then shutter in your home and hide in a corner and keep your children at home. This is an easy decision for the schools. Stay out of medicine. All the charts and graphs can be skewed into any result you want, so stop wasting time on these PowerPoint presentations. Cases are not illnesses or death. Start talking about prevention. Actually, taking prevention should have been and in the forefront in the beginning. No one can stop the spread of a virus. Just moving the air moves the air molecules, opening the door, waving your hand, walking down the hallway, talking. Those are all examples of air movement. What makes you think wearing a mask into a restaurant and then taking it off at your table makes you less dangerous when you are sitting? But standing up, you are dangerous? When was the last time you were tested for smallpox, measles, and polio? I'm going out on a ledge here, but I'm going to say probably never. This so-called shot for COVID is a drug, not a vaccine. A vaccine stops the spread. This is a moneymaker and a control device. Parents, the school, or the government is not the de facto parent, but you insecure parents are allowing the schools and government to take over and make us a nanny state. Parents, you need to figure this out. The schools are not babysitting organizations either. I figured it out as a parent of 2 adult children. I made sacrifices. I didn't expect any taxpayer-funded institution to do it for me. We are spending money to make all of you feel better. Well, use some common sense. If your child is ill, they need to stay at home. When they are better, they can return. It's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Last up this evening for public comment regarding our COVID update, Mr. Cole Garmani. Oh, sorry, Miss. Sorry.
My name is Cole Garmani, 1103 Pine Lane Road. This wasn't originally necessarily part of my speech, but I just have to say this after giving that COVID update presentation. As you can see, the cases are rising. So your on-site experimental jab clinics are obviously not helping, and the vaccine is what is causing the rise in cases. It's really not rocket science here. 1 + 1 = 2. Masks are not working and literally do nothing for this virus, and the vaccine is not working, as you can see, also with the spike in cases currently. I'm also appalled by the difference in treatment you laid out between vaccinated and unvaccinated when the vaccine clearly does nothing to slow the spread, and you can still get COVID even being fully vaccinated. As we all know, there are many types of families: 2-parent homes, blended families, and single-parent homes. I am that single-parent home with no other financial assistance. It's insane to me that I am a tax-paying citizen and was forced to pull my son from public school and pay someone to homeschool my son. Do you know how much that cost me? Do you know how far I have to drive to take my son to homeschool? How many miles I'm putting on my car? And we all know how high gas prices are right now. God willing, he has made a way for my son and I, but do you know how much we have had to sacrifice because of the uncertainty of the school board's decision making? Do you know how much I have been forced to give up? Do you even care? As the sole provider for my son, this has put a lot of extra stress on my family of 2. My son's education was in your hands and you failed him. My son deserves an education without a mask on and without feeling the pressure to follow along with the hostile environment you are creating for him. I can't believe we are still here 2 years later talking about masks. I want to dive deeper into that hostile environment, which my son started to show signs of just with remote learning, signs of increased anxiety and change in sleep and diet. We even had to go to a therapist for a long period of time just to get him back to eating somewhat normal. Brown University scientists collected data from 1,600 children. This study analyzed the cognitive development of the kids through infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and looked at how average development scores in 3 key areas had been affected during the COVID era with shocking results. The conclusion of that study found that, in fact, face masks do harm children's development and significantly reduces development. COVID rules are blamed for a whopping 23% dive in young children's development. So please, the next time anyone tries to say masks do not harm children, please know that they in fact do. Masks don't work and neither does the vaccine. You showed it with your COVID update.
Thank you. All right, that concludes item A, our district COVID update. Moving on to item B, under section 4, discussion information items, our 2022-2023 school calendar.
All right, good
Ms.
evening, Board of Education. You will find in your board packet a copy of the proposed calendar for the 22-23 school year. Dr. Settles and I would like to propose this calendar, and I thought tonight I would just go through some of the highlights. The first thing that I think is important to note is this calendar looks very similar to our current calendar. That has to do with, obviously, the number of days has not changed, as well as the holidays fall over the weekend again, just as they did this year. You will notice that there are 173 student days for the elementary and 175 for the secondary. Along with that, our first day of school would be August 11th for students in grades K through 7 and 9. That is a Thursday start, and that was something that we heard a lot of positive feedback on from our staff as well as our families. The littles that are just starting school for the first time, that's a good way to give them an opportunity to have a little short start and anticipation, and then they get a break before we hit it hard the following week. The last day is May 24th, as you can see, and we do have some additional days built into the calendar if we would need them due to inclement weather or other reasons to minutes. We don't anticipate the need to use those, but we did put those in as needed if necessary. You'll also notice that in November, we kept our professional learning trade-out day for our staff. That's the Wednesday before the Thanksgiving's holiday break. Last year we did, staff could have that day off. It is their time, or in return they had to cash in for their professional learning credits. This past year we did offer professional learning training sessions on that day as well, so if a staff member just wanted to get their credits that day and be done with it, they could. We awarded over 600 credits that day as well. You'll notice that the staff development day in September was moved up. It is closer. It'll now lay off of the Labor Day weekend. That was strategic. That's a need that we heard from our staff. Waiting till the end of the month was some of the materials and information that we needed to cover to launch the school year. That was a long time to wait for that. And we also thought that this was more family friendly, extending the weekend for them. So that is a change. Winter break, you'll see the release is the 20th. We heard lots of positive things this year, especially from family and staff, that they really appreciated the days prior to the holiday to get things in order. And it also was a great way for our secondary students with their final schedule. And with that kind of summarizes the calendar as a whole. Are there questions that I could answer for you, or comments that you have?
I'd just like to share with the board that we did share a couple of actual drafts, including this one, with our administrative team, because as our building leaders, they sometimes see things and hear things from families, from community members that we don't. So in addition to the board conversation that we'll have tonight and at subsequent meetings, if the board chooses, we did run this by our administrative team as well.
I think it follows a traditional calendar, which I think is helpful for families for future planning because they do count on that. I like the idea of moving that staff development day in September and to align it to Labor Day. That is a consideration, I think, for families is a great one. Otherwise, I think it's a great calendar. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I also want to thank Dr. Settles. She has done a lot of work on this tonight to get it ready to this point. So thank you, board.
To try to devise a calendar that supports everyone but also meets our statutory requirements for a number of hours that each of our levels require. So again, thank you, Dr. Settles and your team, Ms. Erie and your team, and all the administrators that put forth their information in order for this calendar to be presented out. Any other board comments or discussion regarding the proposed calendar for the 2022-2023 school year? All right, seeing none and seeing no public comment related to that agenda item, we will move on to item C, our review of Policy 1000, Public Relations and Communication. As a reminder to the board and to the public, each year, the board resets and goes and begins our annual review of all policies for the district, thus us returning and starting with the 1000 series again this January. Ms. Iman.
I would just say Dr. Settles and I are currently in the process of going through their 1000 series. We've got a few minor changes that we'll bring back to you on the 24th. But if any of you get the opportunity to look through those and present us with, or shoot us an email or let us know if you have any recommended changes as well. Any questions on the 1000?
Nope, again, thank you, Ms. Iman, for that reminder. Again, board members, if you have any questions regarding the 1000 series or potential edits or modifications or addition, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Settles, Ms. Iman, or myself in order to coordinate those potential comments, questions, or additions or subtractions. Seeing no further board comment regarding item C and no public comment regarding item C, we will move on now to item D under section 4, discussion and information items, our Papillion La Vista High School scoreboard discussion. Mr. Richards.
Good evening, Board of Education, and I'm excited about this opportunity to talk to you about putting a new scoreboard in at Papillion La Vista High School. We are using that field now. It's got new turf on there for varsity soccer and some reserve football. And, you know, right now for the rationale, we're looking at our current scoreboard being outdated on that field. The scoreboard will have new additional features for both soccer and football because it is digital, and you can, for example, type in the different stats that you want to have up on the scoreboard during a ball game. Which is a good feature to enhance the spectator experience as well. It will include a smaller auxiliary scoreboard on the east side of the stadium and building, just for line of sight for the team that's on the west side of the field, because the scoreboard will be on the kind of the southwest side of the field facing the stands. So it's going to be difficult to see for that team that's on the west side, so there'll be a little small one up there on that side that keeps time and score as well. As you can see, the costs and funding, the scoreboard itself with the software and control need is about $33,066. The tear down of the old scoreboard and install of the new is $22,796, so the total project would be $55,862. We'd like to pay for that initially either from the foundation or the special building fund. I've had meetings with Mr. Dinker and the foundation board and talking about doing this, and they're still trying to figure out some things with some other purchased scoreboards in the past with the advertising dollars and where they stand with those. But we did submit the foundation, thankful to Mr. Dinker for doing that, a Facebook grant, but we won't know if that will be accepted until March. So the season starts March 1st, and there's some lead time on that scoreboard, and we'd like to be able to get that ordered now, either through the special building fund or the foundation. And hopefully at the next meeting I'll have a recommendation for you, one of the two there, if we can get that through the foundation or not. But either way, you can see on the picture I'll show you here in a little bit that there's going to be 4 places for advertising at the bottom of the scoreboard that I think we can generate about $8,000 a year from to help pay it back, to either us or the foundation, if the foundation grant doesn't come through. Here's our current scoreboard. I think that one was there probably when I played football in reserve back in my days, and I don't want to say when that is because I don't want to date myself here, but that's our current scoreboard. This is what our new one would somewhat look like here. All of that will be digitized, so you can see that's on the football setting right there. So you have downs to go, ball on, quarter, those types of things, and that can switch over to our soccer mode as well. And you can put in the actual names of the teams up there instead of home and guest. Oops. And at this time, I would entertain any questions from you regarding the new scoreboard.
Well, it's definitely like yourself. I marched many a times in the mud on that field prior to turf being there, as well as did soccer tryouts in the snow a few years in a row, with not even having the opportunity to play on our home site, having to play down at the Papillion Soccer Complex for all of our home games, as well as practice at the Vista Sports Complex back then. So I'm so thankful that the board and the bond had money for replacement turf. It was definitely long overdue. That turf can separate, and that is, I'm glad we got that, because those are injuries waiting to happen as turf ages, and that turf was beyond its useful life. And as you could see, so was our scoreboard. The Monarchs take pride in being able to host home soccer games there. I think it's a great advantage. Our students don't have to get in a car and drive, multiple miles or try to find rides to go support their home teams and their fellow friends and student athletes. It's definitely something that is probably long overdue for that field. That field also does host numerous other outside teams that could also be a money generator from a sponsorship standpoint, as well as renting our facility to recoup some of those funds. Definitely be very curious at what kind of the final bids come in at, and as well as I would definitely like to see a Facebook grant or some ability to help offset some of that cost, but it's definitely something that, based on the rendering, would be fitting for the amount of money that we've invested in a home field that is not only used by sports, but by the band as well for marching practice and other activities. Other board comments, questions? Okay. Seeing no further board comments or questions, we do have one public comment regarding the PLHS scoreboard. Welcome, Ms. Brittany Holtmeyer.
Hi, Brittany Holtmeyer, 207 207 Ridgewood Drive. I just have a quick question, nothing long. I was just curious as to how that we got into this relationship with Facebook. And why are we asking for this funding from Facebook when we can do fundraisings within the schools ourselves? That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further public comment regarding the PLHS scoreboard. Moving on to our final item under Section 4 discussion and information items. Item E, the Papillion La Vista South High School baseball and softball field backstops. Mr. Richards.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to get into why we're looking at new backstops down at the Papillion La Vista South High School fields. Our current backstops are only about 22 feet high. Just to give you an example, Fricky Field's around 30 to 32 feet high. We're looking at safety of spectators and students walking into and congregating in the stadium area, the concessions area. As I'll show you here in a picture, it can improve the spectator viewing from the bleachers behind home plate as well. I think we could look at this field projects at both Titan baseball and softball complex and the Monarchs where they play with the city fields at Papillion and La Vista. Starting that beginning discussion on improvements at all those fields as we look at, staying competitive with our neighboring school districts in Class A overall with our field conditions and stadium conditions. Costs and funding. The cost for the tearing down and installing new backstops at the baseball and softball fields at Papillion La Vista South is $83,950. That's a little lower than what I had talked to you about initially because they're going to give us a discount of about $10,000 off of doing them both at the same time because of the rental equipment needed to install and take down the existing backstops. That by doing them at once, they save a lot of money by doing it that way. This one would be paid for through the special building fund. Here's what ours current look like at our baseball field. So you can see it's kind of shorter there. Balls go over the fence and go down into a ravine. We lose several $100s of equipment during practice times throughout the year. You can see that the backstop here stops at the dugouts. And I'm sorry, this isn't a great picture, but we will have netting that actually extends over the dugouts now on both sides that are up around 35 feet tall. So that will help keep balls in play versus having them spraying all around the facility. This is an example of a field of what that netting looks like. So you can see how the posts behind the backstop where typically the bleachers are in any given stadium, and ours as well, that they pull behind the bleachers and then extend the cabling over the top so you get a lot better viewing of the baseball game or softball game doing it this way. This one doesn't show the netting going over the top of the dugouts, but it does show where we would put a pole on the outside of the dugouts to where that net would extend over the top for safety reasons. And then here's kind of what it will look like on a viewing from the bleacher area versus what we have now where we have a lot of poles and things of that nature with the chain link. A lot of the stadiums are doing this now. If you look at the new Papillion landing, all of theirs is netting. Gretna just installed brand new softball and baseball facilities with turf, with netting, the whole works. So, I would invite the board to go visit that facility at some point in the future discussions of trying to improve both Monarchs and Titan stadiums. And that is the presentation for the backstops for both softball and baseball. I will say, too, I forgot to bring this up, that, I've had some discussions with both cities. City of Papillion is where we have the Monarch baseball field, and City of La Vista is where we have the softball field. And they are interested. They seem to be. La Vista, we're at the beginning stages. Papillion, we're a little further along. Their budgets are a little bit different than ours, fiscal year. So their new budget for 22 just started here in January, where ours has been going since September. So this would be a beginning process of discussions with those cities to where they could get that included in their 2023 budget if both agencies decide to do that, our agency and theirs.
Valerie would like to ask you, the high school is very windy out there. What happens if we extend the height during stormy, windy weather? Any concerns?
These are engineered. The posts are actually about 9 inches round, so they are made to withstand wind. Now, at a tornado level or something like that, we're probably in trouble, but 40, 50 mile an hour winds will be fine. We've had a couple storms since I've been here, and both times we've had fence damage out at Papillion La Vista South along the football field area, but nothing yet in the baseball or softball area. So, if something were to happen wind-wise, we'd want to have safety precautions. If we get 40, 50 mile an hour winds, we probably shouldn't be out there. If something does break, we fix it, and that's what we do.
Have we had any liability issues as far as baseball coming out and damaging cars or hitting people? I know down at Turkey Field, the Monarchs have I've been out there, and I see that it does go over there and hit cars and people. Mm-hmm. Did we have any liability from any of them?
Not that I'm aware of at this particular time, but there's always that danger. Even though you put up new netting and everything else, there are some things that still can happen, and you just have to deal with those things as they would come. But we haven't had any, I don't believe, Dr. Tafoya.
The Titans have only people being injured or hit by balls, but over at the Monarch, they definitely do have, and I don't know about the ones in La Vista. I really have never been over there. I probably should be, but I never have. Okay. What is the lifespan of the netting?
About 10 to 12 years.
Did you put, is there a timeline yet for having this done? Because I know like you showed on the scoreboard, you've already got a plan.
Yeah, I'd like to bring both of these back for recommended approval at the next meeting, and once that's done, the orders will be put in for the equipment, and it's just going to depend on the lead time. I mean, our goal is to get these up by March 1st, especially in the baseball, but we're doing them at the same time, so we'd hope the softball would come in around the same time, but before our first game for sure. Now, whether that can happen with supply and demand, the company thinks that has the lowest bid. Mack Brothers Landscaping thinks they can pull it off at this particular time.
Any other board comments or questions regarding the backstop netting for both the baseball and softball fields at Papillion La Vista South? Seeing none, that concludes Section 4, discussion and information items. Moving on to Section 5, future board calendar. January 17th, 2022, no school for students, a staff development day. And January 24th, 2022, the next Board of Education meeting at 6 p.m. here at the central office. Seeing no further business before this board, I will adjourn the Papillion La Vista Community Schools Board of Education meeting for January 10th, 2022 at 7:38 p.m. Thank you all.